Great. A very good afternoon to you. Good morning, good evening. I know we are joining from different places, so I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to our second webinar. This webinar is going to uh, serve as a preparatory session for the upcoming conference. We are having the Accelerating Equality in Food, Land and Water Systems Conference, Driving Solutions Through Evidence and Learning. So this webinar is part of three webinars that are coming up. We had the first one a few weeks ago. So again, I take this opportunity to welcome you to this webinar, the second one. And today we are going to discuss elevating youth agency and opportunities. My name is Vivian Atakos. I am with the Gender Equality and Inclusion Accelerator at the CGIAR, and I will be a moderator for this 1 hour session today. So we all know that feeding future generations depends on engaging youth to build a vibrant food system. Yet many young people are leaving agriculture for other opportunities, leaving behind an aging workforce. Political and environmental crises disproportionately affect youth, highlighting the need for better opportunities to enhance food security, reduce poverty, and build resilience. However, investments targeting youth remain limited and lack strategic, evidence-based approaches to tackle their diverse challenges and aspirations effectively. As we mark the International Youth Day, yes, happy International Youth Day to all of you. This webinar will focus on elevating the voices and agency and opportunities for youth in agri-food system. So we do have exciting speakers before us. We will have framing presentations, as you can see on the screen, and we'll also have a panel discussion. But I want to take this opportunity to welcome you all once again. Feel free to take advantage of the chat option, chat box, and introduce yourself and your organization. So to get us started, we are going to hear from our framing speakers who are going to give us an opening statement. And so first up, we are going to have Christine Davis. She is a senior research fellow with the International Food Policy Research Institute. Christine is based in Cape Town. No, sorry, in South Africa. I think Cape Town is at the back of my mind because we'll be there in October. Welcome, Christine, and let's hear from you the opening statement. Over to you.
Thanks, Vivian. Thanks very much. It's great to be with you all. So just a few remarks from my side. When I think about opportunities for youth engagement in agri-food systems, I tend to use the gender equality and social inclusion framework to conceptualize how youth engage. And this focuses on agency, resources, and institutions. So I know we're going to be discussing some of these things today, but agency is things like capacity to make decisions, take action. It's also, when we talk about resources, it's access to essential resources like land, credit, knowledge, appropriate technologies, and those kinds of things. And this is really affected by the enabling environment, both the formal laws, policies, rules, and regulations, and also informal social norms. These are the institutions that affect how youth engage in agriculture and agri-food systems. So I've conducted a number of research studies on youth engagement and agriculture. I've looked at opportunities for youth to be involved in agricultural extension, providing or receiving extension services in Rwanda and Uganda. I've looked with FAO at barriers and constraints facing young agripreneurs in India and Papua New Guinea. And with the CGIAR East and Southern Africa Regional Integrated Initiative, Ukama Ustawi, done some landscape analyses in Malawi and Zimbabwe on youth engagement and agribusiness. So just pulling on those studies and my other experience, when we look at agency, we can look at it from both the supply side and the demand side. So the supply side is the organizations, the programs that are supporting young people, while the demand side is what youth require to successfully engage in agricultural, agribusiness, entrepreneurship, etc. And you can strengthen this agency through things like capacity strengthening, internships, coaching, mentoring, and training. So, for instance, in our study on young agripreneurs in Rwanda and Uganda, we found the major constraint that youth faced there was limited education and also lack of assets like land or cash. I think some of these studies we're putting links into the chat there so you can look into more depth. There's also a Uganda's program that we studied that was doing competency development of young people to facilitate leadership development. And we found that the training there really increased youth's credibility among farming communities and supported the growth of ag competencies. On the supply side, of course, there's many training programs for young people, but they're not all the same. A lot of times, formal training, let's say technical vocational education and training, is really theoretical and it doesn't give enough practical training. Like you know how to drive a tractor, but you've never actually gotten in one and driven it. Um, and training programs really need to be tailored to young agripreneurs because there's a lot of different needs that they have depending on their situation. So coaching and mentoring, which is more one-on-one, is really important. And also promoting agripreneurship through school curricula can help get young people used to the idea of agripreneurship and also provide knowledge and skills for success. And then I think you really need to build awareness and capacities in agriculture for young people early on. Before, not just when a person is leaving school and like looking for a job or for further education, but much earlier in school programs like 4-H in the USA, 4K in Kenya, 4S in Guatemala. These are all youth development programs that make young people aware of opportunities in agriculture. On the resources side, our landscape analysis of youth engagement in agripreneurship in Malawi suggested measures to improve access to things like inputs, markets, and equipment. And in Zimbabwe, it really showed that women in particular have less access to land, inputs, market, credit, and information. I'm sure it's no surprise to most of you on the call. In Zimbabwe, though, we took this analysis a step further and we partnered with a couple of universities there to support young people and young women in particular using a sustainable revolving fund to better access resources and services. So this allowed young agripreneurs, bakers, poultry keepers, mushroom farmers, fresh produce vendors to expand their businesses. So with this sustainable financing mechanism supported by capacity building and mentorship, business education, business development education, we were able to create more sustainable livelihoods. And I hope you put that virtual field trip in the chat. I sent the latest link because that's an interesting website to look at. And we'll be presenting it at the Gender Conference in Cape Town. Then also just technological devices and mechanization is important. Also with the CGIAR Regional Integrated Initiative, Ukama Ustawi, we had a share fair where we facilitated knowledge exchange on innovative technologies like borehole irrigation that's solar powered, soil moisture sensors for irrigation, two-wheel tractors, and basin diggers were all discussed with this share fair in Ethiopia. And then institutions are also important. Our work in Rwanda showed a gap that many organizations who are trying to support youth just lump youth altogether. Youth, they say, and they don't think about there's older youth and there's younger youth. There's married youth and there's unmarried youth. They might be male or female. They might be very rural areas or they might be in an urban area. They come from different ethnic groups. And so these issues of intersectionality, issues of cultural norms also have to be considered when engaging young people. I just want to close focused on these three broad strategies. So the FAO report on the status of youth in agri-food systems talks about inquiring more, including more, and investing more. So for inquiring more, there's a lot of advocacy to involve youth in agri-food systems. But at the same time, there's some evidence gaps, right? We don't know the right research methods, the right research tools to use to tackle these issues, to find out the answers to the questions that we have of how to engage them better. So, insights from gender and inclusion research show that targeted resources like guidelines, frameworks, methodologies can drive initiatives to empower smallholder farmers, to overcome barriers, and to reinforce sustainable agri-food systems. So, with colleagues from IFPRI, my organization, and from IMI, the International Water Management Institute, we're working on a review of methods and tools, also to be presented in Cape Town, we hope. And then we need to include more and to amplify youth voices, right? So, having reviewed a number of papers, I'm on one of the scientific thematic committees for the gender conference. I've seen that literature that shows how young people's aspirations are frequently constrained by gender norms, the limited opportunities, and the local realities. So, the enabling environment is really important to help them achieve their aspirations. And then finally, we need to invest more. Where we saw success in our study of young agripreneurs in Rwanda and Uganda were initiatives that involved youth as either private, for profit extension and advisory service providers, or as recipients of private and public sector extension services that guide these youth toward self employment. Our study of FAO of agripreneurship in India and Papua New Guinea found that public, private, civil society partnerships were really important for promoting agripreneurship among young people in these two countries. And it showed that funding platforms for young agripreneurs helped to showcase ideas to support their growth and to support their success and to exchange these ideas. So I just wanted to mention we need to invest more, we need to include more, and we need to inquire more. We need to bring new evidence and new experiences and to share these about how to strengthen agency, how to provide resources, how to use institutions, norms, and policies to sustainably engage young people in food, land, and water systems. With that, I'll turn it back to the moderator, and thanks a lot.
Thank you, Kristen. Indeed, very solid points, bringing about conversations on the agency side, intersectionality, and just letting us think about the various strategies that could work based on that report. So with that, let me turn it over to our next framing presenter. We are having Mashoko Chakanyuka, who is the head of youth employment in agriculture at AGRA, the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa. Mashoko, you are welcome to give your opening statement for the next 5 to 7 minutes, please. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Vivian, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all those that are attending. I would like to start by giving an example that happened last year at the Africa Food System Forum, an event that AGRA and other partners do run. It was in Kigali. We brought a number of young people to the conference. Then there's something that a young person said that stuck with me. One of the young people said it was easier for them to meet their Minister of Agriculture outside of their country than it was in their country. And that really stuck to me in terms of how accessible are we to the cause of young people. If it takes for a conference to happen 1,000 kilometers away from home, for young people to be able to engage with us, either as government, as development partners. So that thing just stuck with me in terms of the discussion that we are having today. How do we elevate youth agents and opportunities when in the first place we are also not very quite accessible for these young people? So I will speak from three perspectives for the work that we do at AGRA. Number one, I will touch a bit on policy, but I also delve into entrepreneurship being an area that we support. Then I will speak to ecosystem work more broadly in terms of the work that we are doing and how we ensure that there is agency and also elevating opportunities for young people. I think Christine touched on a number of very crucial elements in terms of the framing of inclusion of young people within ag-food system space. At AGRA, we do have an initiative or a diagnostic that we run, which we call YEDF, which is Youth Ecosystem Development Framework. So this is really a framework that enables us to get into the ecosystem that's supposed to support youth entrepreneurship and identify areas of opportunity, but also constraints and gaps within that ecosystem that supports young people. So we usually premise our work from that particular diagnostic because it unearths a lot of issues, whether they are policy related, whether they have to do with capacity, whether they have to do with institutions, like Christine mentioned, that some of the issues that we deal with have to do with institutions. So we do have that as an overarching framework that we use before we then begin to develop or deploy interventions. But allow me to start talking about the work that we do with youth. Like I said, our young people are not finding us accessible. And when I say us, I mean people like myself that are in the development space. I mean people, colleagues that are in government that are supposed to be providing services to these young people. They are not finding us accessible. And I should hasten to say that there's recognition, particularly on the African continent, that the youth voice is important. And most governments have actually put in place mechanisms. They've put in place platforms where young people are supposedly to engage with government, office bearers, or even other development partners. But what we've noted is those platforms are not being utilized. And as a result, young people still don't find us accessible. So what we do at AGRA is we begin to activate those platforms. We work with government to activate existing platforms. If you talk to most of these government, they have platforms where parliamentarians, for instance, are supposed to be dialoguing and meeting with young people. And in most cases, these things are not happening, either because no one is just following through, but in some instances because of issues to do with resource. So as AGRA, we provide both technical and at times financial support to activate these platforms. In one of the platforms that we use are parliamentary dialogues, where the policymakers, very critical in terms of shaping the policy frameworks that guide and support youth participation and meaningful engagement within food system. So we support that kind of work so that young people are able to interface. But for young people to get into these dialogues and have meaningful engagement, they also need to be prepared. So we also provide support to youth, not individuals, but through their various networks, through their various associations, for them to be able, number one, to gather evidence and be able to present it in a convincing manner to the policymakers so that they can effect policies, but also provide strategies and ultimately programs that do empower young people. So we have a body of work that really supports that kind of intervention. Then we also realize that there are quite a number of young people that are already active in the agri-food system space, where they are already running enterprises at different levels. Some are nano, some are micro, some are small, some are at a medium level. And we acknowledge that heterogeneity in terms of the SMEs that young people are actually running. But what we've noted is there's also a segment of young people that are not in school, in employment, or in training, that are not aware of some of the opportunities that do exist in agriculture. So we also do a lot of work in terms of surfacing the opportunities and profiling them. So we have work that we do, which we call profiling of opportunities within the ag-food systems. For a young person that may not know, for instance, one of our flagship initiative, what we call the village-based advisor, is basically training a young person to be able to offer extension service to smallholder farmers, but also connect them to input suppliers so that they sort of become a last mile delivery agent, but also a first mile aggregation for off-takers. So a young person may not be aware of these opportunities, but because these are models that we have built, these are models that we have developed. So we sell these models to young people so that they are aware that there are opportunities like this that exist. So the issue of awareness is very critical for young people to tap into the agri-food systems. Without awareness, most of these young people will not be able to understand what happens. But getting them aware is one thing. The next set of interventions that are critical is providing them with the adequate skills for them to exploit these opportunities, but also overcome some of the obstacles that do exist in food systems. So we have a lot of skilling that we do. Some of it is very technical in terms of training. Some of it relates to entrepreneurship. So we provide a lot of entrepreneurship. And in some cases, we actually provide this through coaching, but also mentoring to a limited number, of course, of entrepreneurs because of the intensity of programs such as coaching and mentoring, which we do run through our flagship initiative, again, that is called the Generation Africa Fellowship Program, where we take young entrepreneurs through a fellowship with coaching and mentoring. And we've also seen that the issue of access to finance is a very critical aspect as well. So we deploy business development services for entrepreneurs, but we are cognizant that the concentration of business development service providers tends to be in urban areas or closer to some of the major centers. When you go deep into the rural areas, where a significant proportion of our young people still are, and you just mentioned the status of youth in agri-food system report, it tells us that even as we speak, despite the rapid urbanization that has been taking place, about 40% of the youth population is still in rural areas. So the focus still needs to continue to be in rural areas. So we are working on a business development service initiative to train local based business development services that are in the rural areas that will be able to provide services to young people that are in some of these places. I call them off tarmac places. And I'll be winding off shortly. One thing
Yes,
that we've
please.
also realized that is, as you are supporting young entrepreneurs, the tendency is for us to overly focus on the entrepreneur and forget that their business exists in an ecosystem that also needs to be enriched. I always give an example of this young person that I saw in Uganda. They run a mechanization service. They do shelling of commodities. But for them to be able to get throughput, it means farmers need to produce huge volumes that enables them to have marketable access that will require mechanization service. So for farmers to do that, you need things like inputs, you need things like extension systems, you still need things like seed systems, you need things like fertilizer systems. They look like they are distant from the young entrepreneur's business, but actually those are the things that enable farmers to produce surplus which will require mechanization service, which speaks to the business of this young entrepreneur. So I always encourage fellow development partners and government that as we are looking at supporting these young entrepreneurs within ag food system, let's look at them, number one, as the entrepreneur, but let's also look at the ecosystem and what else is required to make sure that their business thrive. Let's support them, but let's also cultivate the ground on which they are sitting so that their businesses will thrive and be successful. Thank you, Vivian.
Thank you, Mashoko. Indeed, you brought very interesting perspectives and, of course, informed by the work that AGRA is doing. We do appreciate that. And so I'm going to bring yourself and Christine back once we hear from our youthful speakers who are coming up next. You will still have to weigh in on what they say. So, colleagues, friends, allow me to bring on board our panel. We have Janet Toroitich, who's an agripreneur from Kenya. We have Devrol Ligodi, who's an agripreneur from South Africa. And we have Nicholas Guitoze, who's a consultant. Uh, Also, he works on agricultural extension and is currently based at Virginia Tech. So welcome to my panel. I cannot see them yet. I hope they will be on your screens shortly. Janet, can you hear me? Please confirm. Devrol, either of them who can hear me?
Hi, Vivian. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Yes, I can hear you very well and I can
Okay.
see you. Looking good. And at least where you
Thank
are is
you.
quite warm, so that's encouraging. I can also see Nicholas, and I hope that Janet will be here shortly. I saw her join a while back. So we'll start with you, Devrol. Could you briefly tell us about your journey as an agripreneur? What do you farm? How did you get started? Was it easy for you? Let's hear your story.
Okay, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to everybody who has joined us today. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here, to be part of this conversation, honestly. So I'm Devrol Lorodi, and I am South African. I'm based in a province called Gauteng, in Bronkhorstspruit. It's a farm area called Nutredacht. So eventually when I started farming, it was actually an interest in aquaponics, to be honest. And so I was working as an accountant, and I just got so much interested into farming because I did see my grandmother farm as I was going back to work back and from. And so the interest has always been there from the get-go. However, I never knew how to navigate it, and I thought that navigating it would be through aquaponics because it was a system that was quite easier, from being an accountant and having the courage to say, okay, let me start farming for health benefits, really, just to see that I actually can grow something for, from the farm, the backyard, and actually farming and eating what I actually grown. And that was from a teaching from my grandmother in Limpopo. So when COVID happened, it was an opportunity. I was like, let me go home because at home, home in Nurgedag Bronkhorstspruit is a farm. So my dad was not using it. It was just where we live. It was peaceful for him. He just wanted to own a farm, but not necessarily utilizing it. So I did go for quite an extensive to go see what aquaponics is about, and it was a system of a circular economy and it's green. But to me, it seemed like this is a possibility, but the equipment on its own is quite hefty and quite expensive, and it was not something you could start and be commercial onto, especially for a first-time generation farmer who does not have no experience in farming whatsoever, and having to start the journey all by myself and having to acquaint myself with neighboring farmers around me. The only challenge that was massive was that the community around me, there are maize and grain farmers. They've no idea as to growing. Well, they do have an idea, but having it on an aquaponic or a system where you just grow produce and produce on a system like aquaponics, and which is a fish and the circular of it bring the fertilizer through to growing the produce, to say. So was it easy? No, it wasn't, because at first it was COVID. Everything is on lockdown. However, but there was food. There was food and there was navigating through it. And so for me, it was I actually wanted to grow herbs because my area, quite frankly, it's quite cold here. It's very misty. It is ice cold. The river, when you open taps, it's frozen. So we really have to wait to water our plants. And so when I started it out, it was that the system of aquaponics was expensive. And so with the savings that I had, I can only grow it on the ground and with the soil and starting the whole process doing it. And it was quite, for me, it was difficult because I don't know how to grow anything. Honestly, I don't know how to grow anything. I had no idea. But thanks to YouTube and having a lot of time Googling and how to grow your herbs. And honestly, I did. And I wanted to be a herb farmer because I enjoyed seeing how chives are grown or parsley is grown into the system. And it was, for me, it was encouraging to see that I can actually be a farmer and try to modernize it. And how do I even modernize it if I'm being a farmer? So I started out at a very small portion, and I got sales, and the sales were pretty good, and I got excited. So this is actually something I can live with. I can leave my career and actually start this. And I was excited because the sales were really good, and having to start at a quite a peak. And honestly, I started from like 100 to 150 kilos of parsley and coriander, and from then on I did get challenges with climate mitigation I did plant spinach as 0.5 hectare, and because of climate and the global warming becoming an issue here, also I got hit by a hailstorm, and I had to also go back to the drawing board to say, now what do I do as a farmer if I really want to grow my expertise in this? And so I joined Afasa, and Afasa had introduced me to hydroponics, and with the hydroponics, then I started researching even more to grow something that can grow very well into vertical farming, and that's how I was introduced into vertical farming. And I grow it on towers. So one particular tower holds 96 pockets, and it's a soilless method, hydroponics, and you grow it, and within 2 to 3 weeks, you're ready to harvest. And the fact that it's a recycled, you're not wasting water, you're not wasting your nutrients, you're not wasting any of that sort. And I really saw that now, because now farming is not as boring and lengthy hours on the farm trying to get rid of weeds. And then it got to the innovation part of farming, where now the students in the universities are quite getting interested in what is vertical farming, and you can actually get into farming and really have to grow something so easy. It's not work intensive. You really do have the time for working with this. And for me, it was encouraging to say that the hardships are always going to be there, even inside the hydroponics. There are hardships. I don't think anything comes as easy there as it is. Did you get fungus out of the blue? You know what happened? Because last night it was okay, and today I have fungus. What happened? And all of that is like always trying to encourage yourself, always trying to be in a system to say, how do I navigate the farming and how do I introduce fun stuff to the youth? I'm also youth. I don't want to get sunburned the whole time outside. It can be easier to grow something which is hard, and it can be much more encouraging to be a farmer, and it can get fun as well. And so this
Yeah.
is my story. Yes.
Wow, that's an interesting story. And also just hearing from you that, yeah, you started, there were challenges, but you found a way around it. And we'll probably come back to our experts after this conversation and see, weigh in what they think about your story. But for now, coming from you, Devrol, of course, in South Africa, let's come to the East. Janet is back, so let's also hear about Janet's story. She's from Kenya. Let's see whether her experience is any different. Is it similar, Janet? How did you start? What were your challenges? Are you still farming, or how is it? Yes, Janet.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you, Vivian, for
Janet, your audio seems to be problematic. You could still try to turn off your video.
hosting me today.
Okay, let me turn off mine. Janet, I'll have to come back to you. There's still a problem with connection on your end.
Can you hear?
Yes, let's try again.
Can you hear me now?
Still problematic, but Janet, I'll come back to you shortly to hear your story. Are you
Hey,
okay now?
Vivian.
Yes, let's try. Let's
Can you
go
hear
ahead.
me?
Yes, go ahead.
Can you hear me now? Vivian, okay. Okay.
Okay.
So my name is Janet Toretich. I come from rural Kenya, and I am a wheat farmer with
Janet, I will come back to you. Hold on.
I'm going to with 6 years experience in farming. I'm a full-time farmer at the moment. So how I started is fresh.
Okay, Janet, I will come back to you shortly. I'd like to move on to Nicholas. Let me ask my colleagues who are at the back end to also check with Janet on her connection, and we will hear her story shortly. So we do have Nicholas here. Nicholas is into agricultural extension with Virginia Tech. He's a consultant. Yes, I'm being reminded to put my video on. I was trying to see if Janet will still be able to speak, saving her bandwidth. So yes, we do have Nicholas with us. And Nicholas, I wanted you to weigh in on how, of course, we've had the story of Devrol. We'll hear about Janet. She was trying to tell us that she's a wheat farmer based in rural Kenya, but we'll come back to her. So for you as a consultant and one working on agricultural extension, and you've also had the researchers, you've had Christine, you've had Mashoko, who's sort of into the space. How can you imagine that research and practice would work together to support these youth agripreneurs?
Yeah, thank you so much and for the opportunity to contribute to this important dialogue. And it's my honor and great privilege. So in my work across agriculture extension and evaluation capacity development, one truth that has become clear to me is that youth agripreneurs are not just farmers. So they are today's change makers. So to support them, research and practice must work together, not in isolation, but in partnership. So I have 3 points that the first point to bring on the table today to the discussion is that research must be driven by the real needs, the question and aspiration of those is going to serve. And if it is youth, they need to take into consideration their needs. Too often the research is designed not to support in that area. And one thing I learned in my PhD journey at Virginia Tech, like when I was taking some classes on team science and community-based participatory research, research practice, partnership and evaluation, I came to understand that researchers needed to engage practitioners and mostly youth as co-designers of knowledge. So as not only study participants, but co-creators of knowledge, because research is there to produce knowledge. This is not only to improve relevance of the research, but it builds ownership and agency. Since we're talking about youth, how to increase agency of the youth and long-term impact if we want to really impact. Secondly, we must close the gap between knowledge and real action, because generating evidence is not enough. So research must be translated into tools, strategies, and messages that practitioners and young agripreneurs can actually use. So if I produce the research and it's not being used, then there's no need for me to continue doing more research because it's just on the shelf out there. So this requires to invest in systems that support learning. And I've said, and Dr. Christine mentioned about mentorship and in your networks, you focus incubators, webinars such as this one. And equally important is ensuring that research findings are timely and digestible, and context is sensitive because context matters. Thirdly, we need to have an environment where experimentation, reflection, and course correction can be allowed and also expected. This brings me to a critical role of problem-solving leadership grounded in a theory that I used in my dissertation, where like youth agripreneurs as well as other people are problem solvers, and we all solve problems differently. And if it is an environment where there is this cognitive diversity, where we have adapters and innovators all together, so the more adapters, they favor structure, they favor refinement, while the more innovative, they like to challenge the norms and seeking unconventional solution. So if you have that environment, so that's those styles are all valuable. And when we recognize and support this cognitive diversity through research, education, and extension, we can enable effective teamwork, stronger leadership, and more inclusion, more inclusive innovation. And with that, integrating, such a kind of perspective into activities that we do with youth, it can be a game changer. And in closing, if we want youth to thrive in agriculture, we must shift our mindset from delivering solution to youth, but to build a system with youth. So we are co-creators of knowledge. And that means aligning research and practice, furthering cognitive diversity, and even investing in more leadership focus, because when youth are seen as co-creators of knowledge and leaders of change, we don't just strengthen agripreneurship, but we reimagine the future of agriculture itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas. And I noticed that you've actually done it since you are referencing your PhD dissertation, and congratulations for that work. So indeed, they are change makers, and as you say, our research ought to be driven by real needs on the ground, and so it takes working together, co-creating the pathway forward for supporting youth engagement in agri-food systems. So thank you again. I'll come back to you. Let's try to get Janet, if you're here. I still wanted to hear your story in just 1 minute, and also to tell us what you need to make your dreams a reality. But if your connection is not working, then I'll be happy to move on. Do you want us to try again, Janet?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
I've had to leave the farm office to just get outside, and I hope there won't be too much noise. So my name is Janet. On my social media, I go by the name Janet Farm Girl. I've had I'm going to 6 years experience in farming as a full-time farmer. I started a very long time. This is a farming family. I'm a second generation farmer. So immediately after campus, I had done a course, and then I got an internship where I did not find any fun at all while doing it. So I chose to stay home. And when you stay home the full time with an African parent, they just tend to hate you. I don't know if that's the word, but they were too tough on me. So at that moment, we were living in the city. I give my parents enough space, and so that I get enough space to think about what I really want. I left the city and came to our rural home. So at this place, we had a very old house. We had nothing much going on, but we had a very huge farm. It was around September, and luckily we had rains, which was quite abnormal for that time. It was a dry season, but we had rains at that time. So I decided to do traditional African vegetables, which I produced. I was really producing it mainly because I needed the money. That's the first reason. And number two, so that I get a reason to stay in our rural home. Most times my mom used to call me and she'd tell me, why don't you come back and stay with the rest of your family? What's wrong with you? So the vegetable farm really justified why I wanted to stay in our rural home. So I started like that. And funny thing, the word that I can really describe the feeling is I felt like I found myself again. I enjoyed waking up in the morning and going to the farm and to just do the whole farm activities until the day we used to harvest. I harvested, and then I take them to the city to sell. So I did that for around 7 months, 8 months. And then I think my parents also saw that I was doing very well. And they told me, hey, we see that you're doing very well, and especially especially for yourself and for your also for your mental health, and now you're even meaningful. So the farm for you to do something. So they're supposed to do. And so during time, it has been a journey of how we can transform our farm from the traditional ways we used to farm to the modern ways of farming. We used to farm with the disc plow. At the moment, we do minimum tillage. We have improved our seed, the seeds that we plant. We have improved the varieties. We can test our soil. For the past 2 years, we have been mentoring young farmers to learn and to get into farming. Also, we do field days where we invite all the farmers in our region to working with international companies and as their brand ambassador. So that has been the journey, and of course, traveling the world. So it has been quite transformative, and I look forward to making more differences in my region.
Wow, what a story. And I see a huge tractor behind you.
Yes,
Are you able to drive that, or do you need a
No, I
youth-friendly
do.
tractor?
I do. If you check around my TikTok, you can see me doing plowing sometimes.
Oh, nice. Okay. So quite an inspiring journey, Janet. Stay on if you are able to. As we move on to the Q&A, I see a question came up. I'd also like to just hear just one statement from you, Janet, because I'm not sure if your connection will support us again. What support
Yeah.
do you need to make your dreams a reality? Just if you can just give me one, and then I'll go to Devrol. Then we can
Okay.
take the question. Yeah.
I think my dream is to see well, at the moment we have been shouting that so many that young people should get into farming, and you can see a lot of young people are getting into farming. But now the support that we need is, what support can we get for us to produce safe food? We have had trends like in somewhere in Nyandarua where you find farmers dividing their farms into two, where they produce food that are meant for themselves, and then the other side of the other portion of the farm is what they produced for sale, which is most times not safe for consumption. We can go out and have lunch with my friends, and then kachumbari.
Yeah. Yes.
So somebody will ask you, do you really know what you're eating? If you knew what you were eating, if you spray this, let's say agrochemical, you need to observe this number of days for this crop to be, for this
Safe.
fruit to be good. And
Safe.
talking about yes, the food. We are not, and I'm not talking about organic. For me, I'm a large scale farmer. I do around 45 acres of wheat. So I would in Africa we are not there yet, though the big dream is for us to get there. But is the private sector, the NGOs, the calls should produce chemicals that could crop. Why should I worry about cancer? If I spray this, also the farmer needs to understand, if I spray this, I need around 75 days or 80 days.
Okay. Okay,
for
Janet.
this crop to be.
Okay, thank you, Janet. I hear you. You need to know how you can produce safe food, and I think you're also touching on good agronomic practices, if I hear you correctly. And I think Nicolas, who works on agricultural extension, those are some of the things that he might be able to respond to if we have time. But we got your concern. Thank you so much. Devrol, the question I was asking, since I see you in the chat box, is what support you will need. It's the same question as Janet's. What support you'll need to make your dreams a reality? Just one. If you have one at your fingertips, what will make you thrive as a youthful farmer? Devrol. Okay. Okay. We have lost Devrol. So I can see from the chat box, participants are commenting on Janet, your story, of course, from small scale farming to now just starting with vegetables, and now you're into wheat and also working with international companies. So let's take a question from the chat box. I did see one question came up that I like the idea of co-creation of knowledge, and would like to hear from Nicholas or any other speaker on how you think this can be operationalized. Do you have any thoughts or suggestions on how to co-create knowledge, or perhaps even further put it to use? Nicholas, do you want to think about that a bit, or?
So thank you so much for the question. So one food for thought is among the practitioners of participatory research, action research, or community-based participatory research. So the participant in your study, they are also researchers. You count them as researchers, and even the let's say you write a report or an article, they are also counted as authors. So and the co-creation of knowledge happens when you have that, first of all, mentality. And how you can operationalize that is that if you are in the end of conducting research, you take the people, even community you're working with. Everybody is actually they also have the knowledge. So you as a researcher, you are not the one who has the actual knowledge, but everyone is contributing, and even in the outcome they are also contributing. So you also value their contribution. So that's one thing I can share for now.
You? Okay. Devrol, you're back with us. I just wanted to give an opportunity to our agripreneurs so that we know how we can support you, how to make those dreams that you have become real. You're muted. Yeah.
I mean, it's important. Like, it's important to be supported. I think with me, I speak from a point of saying that I'm a first-time generation farmer, and I have no knowledge whatsoever. And when you are in the midst of creating jobs, especially trying to create more jobs for the youth, and trying to navigate the niche markets of growing herbs and going much more further into the niche market, into growing microgreens, because this is where we are headed. I think the most important factor that I say that I'm getting challenged a lot is getting a farm, because of not having enough collateral and not having enough a balance sheet that they look into, especially for a farmer. I cannot get most of these things at a young age as I am, as a first-time generational farmer, trying to get or navigate the industry as much as I can, try to push it and say that I really want to create more jobs, especially for the youth and especially for the ones that are into studying anything to do with agriculture. Already in South Africa, there is a big number of unemployment, and especially into the agricultural space. But because I had an advantage of having my dad's farm and utilizing it, but in order for me to grow, I need to buy a farm so that we can be able to expand not only into shade netting or the hydroponics, but looking at the fact that we're trying to create jobs, and not everybody's going to be an agripreneur because they don't have the mindset of it, but into going into cacao and the into Sakar and the CG, literally saying that we are trying our level best, and if we can try to get funding to get more equipment and trying to get the farm to be utilized or and trying to get compliances, even if you are GAP certified, or maybe you are trying to get to navigate everything in together, funding is the most important factor. Unfortunately, this is where I say, as an agripreneur, trying to pay salaries and trying to get the youth interested into farming, and especially having a phase that says I can get into niche marketing, which is herbs, and there's somebody closer, and they can actually get a hold of me easier to see how we grow herbs, not just growing maize or spinach, but there's other things that you can grow. There's a niche market. And so in all the aspects I could actually mention is funding to explore, expand, and have ownership of something like a farm, because it's not every day where you hear a young farmer has bought a farm, because the bank already has this big collateral. This is how the repayments are there, but it's just so difficult because of the collateral that you really need to
Yes.
pay
And I
back.
think even more difficult when it's a young lady or a young girl doing it. So what we are looking at is your farm. So I just wanted
Correct.
to call
Yes.
attention to Devrol's farm. That's what she's doing, the high value crops, of course, the herbs. So you'll have a chance to connect with Devrol if you're planning to come to Cape Town for the gender conference. And at this point, I want to thank Devrol, Nicolas, and Janet for sharing their stories with us and adding a lot of input onto this discussion. And also want to invite Mashoko to come back and just help us wrap up this conversation by sort of summarizing what you're hearing. Mashoko, just one or two statements, and then we'll also go to Kristen. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Two things for me that stood out from the presentation of our young entrepreneurs, amazing stories and very inspiring. But two things that stood out for me. Number one, I would term it resourcefulness. If you look at both speakers that are practicing as entrepreneurs, what they basically exhibited is resourcefulness. They started where they were. Devrol started very small, like she mentioned. Then she later on grew. That similar story with Janet. She started doing the indigenous vegetables, then grew from that. So the element of resourcefulness and being able to start small is a way that I want to live out with many of our young people that sort of get overwhelmed when they think of farm as a big thing, mechanization, tractors, and combine harvesters. But what we're hearing here is start small, start where you are. And the second thing that I want to bring now to government, development practitioners, policymakers, and lawmakers is the issue of involving young people in providing solutions. In as much as Nicholas is coming from an extension world, but the lesson around co-creation and co-problem solving with young people is very critical. This morning I sat in an International Youth Day celebration where the government availed close to 30,000 hectares of land, but there were no takers from the young people. So that shows that at times the solution that we are providing to the young people are not necessarily what the young people are looking at. So if we view them as beneficiaries of our policies without engaging them in the co-design and co-creation of solutions, we run a risk of those solutions not being useful or efficient or effective in addressing what we want to address. I'll stop at that. Thank you, Vivian.
Thank you, Mashoko. Kristen, what do you
Thanks.
think?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I really liked Mashoko's point there on the policy, as he mentioned earlier, too. But I have two takeaways as well. The first was that importance of agency in terms of the mindsets. Nicholas talks about mindset change and the attitudes that we saw with the young agripreneurs, the grit to face the challenges, to keep learning, and to be that problem solver. So this is very, very important when we're thinking about young people in the agri-food system. And then there's this intergenerational link. Janet talked about her parents and her family farm, and then Devrol actually connected with her grandmother in terms of what she had started doing and what she wanted to learn. So I think that's an important thing to think about too. And this was mentioned in the board that people are writing on as well, this intergenerational links and importance. So thanks. Those are my points.
Thank you so much, Kristen, and thank you to all my wonderful speakers for today. on International Youth Day. It has been a pleasure moderating this conversation. Please, I want you to go to the community of practice. We have one. Check in the chat box. My colleagues have put the link. Join and let's continue having this conversation. Second, yeah, the slide has come up. Thank you so much for that. Second, I also want to invite you to register to attend or participate or come to Cape Town, and let's continue this discussion on gender in food, land, and water systems. We are meeting from 7th to 9th of October. So that is it for today. We are at the top of the hour. Thank you for staying on for this extra 2 minutes. We have enjoyed this webinar, and let's meet in the next one. Thank you so much and have a good day, good evening, good morning. Bye for now. Thank you.